Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you want to leave a suggestion for a video or some constructive criticism, or tell me how you do things, I always like hearing that kind of stuff. Um, so today I'm going to do kind of a beginner's guide to 3 different simple ring shanks. So you can change things up a little bit. I know when I first started, I had a tendency to kind of use a simple half-round band for almost everything. And it's nice to have some options to choose from, so here I'm going to show you how to make 3 pretty easy ones. Before we get started on that though, I wanted to thank some people. First, I'd like to thank my patrons, and I have a new one. It's Patty A. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate that. I think that you'll find that the group of people over there that have formed that community are a super nice group with lots of knowledge and who are willing to share what they know. So I've really enjoyed getting to know them, and I think you will too. So thanks for joining up. And thank you to those of you who are already here on my Patreon. So thanks for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 13,600 and some, I think. And that's pretty amazing, so thank you for that. Thank you for the nice comments that you leave routinely, and I don't know how to let you know that really does help keep me motivated, but it does. And I also appreciate the super thanks and the buy me a coffees, because silver's gotten a little bit more expensive lately, and that always helps. So, all right, well, let's get started on these ring shanks. And this is one of my design idea books, which you can get on my merch store if you're interested. The newer ones have some interesting conversion charts on the back. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find useful since I'm still struggling to think in terms of metric sometimes in my head. There's also one that converts American wire gauge to millimeters, and I think a lot of people overseas might find that useful, since I don't think a lot of people overseas use American wire gauge. So, and I say it sometimes. The thing I like about these though is that it helps me to kind of organize my thoughts and sketch something up. And today we didn't have to do anything too complex because I'm doing some kind of beginner sorts of informative things. So, like I said, I'm going to be showing you 3 different pretty simple shanks to make for rings, and specifically I'm talking about the kind of ring where it has a head that you make separate from the band, and then you mount the band underneath the head. And so when I'm talking about ring shanks, I'm talking about the band itself here when it's this sort of configuration. I would differentiate that type of ring from the type where your bezel or your setting is kind of incorporated right into the band, where it's soldered to the sides of the bezel. This is another example where you got a bezel and it's soldered right to the sides. So the head is not mounted on top on these ones, it's kind of incorporated right into the band. And I'm sure there's a term for that, and I just don't know that term. But so these are some simple ones you can do. You already saw this variation, which would be similar to this one, but I just used 3 square wires on that one. For today's, the first one I'm going to do is 14 gauge round wire here on the 2 outer ones, and then a twisted wire in the middle made out of 2 pieces of 18 gauge twisted together. And so we'll start with that one. I guess I better figure out what size I want to make these. So I pre-made some standard heads for these, so I don't have to worry about those. I think I'm going to do this this setting here with this piece of turquoise that I have, which is kind of a pretty one. It's kind of a real sky blue. And then for the middle one, I'm going to use a little bit narrower wire than that. I made kind of just 3 balls and a pear-shaped stone. That's larimar. And then I have this other blue stone, which I think I've used once before, and I have a couple of other pieces, but I don't remember what it is. It kind of looks like aventurine, but it's blue. So it may be chalcedony or something like that, I'm not sure. But I made sort of a little more contemporary looking sort of setting for this one. So, but the 3 shanks then are going to be 3 wires soldered together, basically, with the center one being twisted wire. This one we're going to take a piece of half round wire, 6 gauge, which is 4.09 millimeters, and we're going to cut a slot on either side, and then we'll shape it into a band. And then finally, we're going to take a piece of 8 gauge half round, which is 3.25 millimeters wide, and then 14 gauge round soldered to either side to make kind of a linear looking band that's not just half round. It'll have some decorative edges basically. And that's, the 14 gauge round is 1.6 millimeters if I remember right. So, but we're going to start with this one, so we need to figure out what size we want to make that. And I'm thinking, let's go with something like a size 9 on this one. I've noticed lately that my larger sizes are a little bit picked over, so since this will just go into my inventory, having some bigger sizes oftentimes will drive a sale because people who have larger fingers have trouble finding rings to fit. So, round wire, it's 14 gauge. Here we go. So since I need 2 of these, I'm going to cut a second one as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and straighten these out. See behind me, I finally got my jewelry unpacked from the series of shows we had in a row, which went pretty well mostly. Except for how hot the first one was. It was really a hot show. With round wire, you know it's pretty straight when it rolls. Some people, to straighten wire, they'll roll it between 2 like bench blocks or something. My bench blocks are so beat up that it just trashes the wire when you do that. So if I had some really smooth, flat surfaces, I could do that probably. It does have a tendency to work harden things a little bit when you do it that way. That's probably close enough. 2 pieces of 18 twisted together are pretty close to the same diameter as this. That's why I use those together a lot. Okay, I'm going to cut this just slightly longer. This one's pretty straight already. I don't think I even annealed this after I twisted it the other day, so that's why it's so shiny too. So it's pretty stiff and springy, which is fine for this. Doesn't matter, but let's make sure we're pretty close to the same length. Could be a little bit shorter. I wanted to thank those people who bought my ebook already. I really appreciate that. That's a great way to support the channel if you want to support the channel. It's, for those of you who haven't seen it or heard of it, it's a guide to all of my 2023 videos. So it has a page for each one, which includes the original sketch like this, a final picture of the outcome, or outcomes if there's more than one piece, like on this one there will be, and some notes about the piece, about what I thought was hard to do, or whether I might have done things differently if I do it again. A list of materials you need, and even a difficulty rating. And finally, there's a link right to the video so you can watch the video and then try it yourself. I think it's a handy way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips. So I'll put a link here if you're interested in checking that out. Alright, so let's find the center of these. Okay, go right across there, all three of those. That'll get me pretty close. So the middle one I'm going to leave straight, and these other two I'm just going to make into slight chevron shapes, which is just kind of a shallow V, by putting the tool right next to the line and then pushing real close with my fingers so that it bends right at that point, just a little bit like that. Do the same thing on this one. Close enough. Okay, so let's solder these together. I've been to my channel before. I use hard silver sheet solder for most everything. Okay, picked up something on the bottom of my pad there. I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux. Currently, I have some other ones next up to try that Pepe Tools was kind enough to send me. Okay, so I'm just going to flux this a little bit then, and then we'll put a little bit of solder on there, and then we'll heat it up again to see if we can get it to flow. Oh, my torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch. I've been using this torch for many years. It is a great torch. And I'm just going to put a big chunk of hard silver sheet solder right there. We'll see if we can get it to flow. If not, we can add a little bit more. We're doing it across 3 wires here. If you're new to this, with silver you got to get everything kind of up to the soldering temperature, or it'll just jump to the place where it does reach that temperature. You want it to puddle across all 3 here. We may have just gotten 2 there. I don't think it really stuck to this one over here. So let's throw another little piece on there, across that little gap. There we go. Now we got a connection. Okay, so those are connected now. In order to shape it, I usually start near the bottom of the mandrel. So I bend it around like this. And flip it over periodically since the mandrel has a taper. And push it up the mandrel a bit. If you need to. Back if it's not laying down flat. Tap it down a bit. So I think what I'm going to do at this stage is just snip off a little bit on those, and then we'll go from there. So let's start with the middle ones. Not that much. You can measure if you want to. So at this stage you have some choices. Well, you have a lot of choices really. I usually choose between flaring these outwards, like that, so that they curve outwards on either side, which looks nice, I think. You can also do them inwards, if you want to have kind of a slightly different look. Kind of like that. I like that as well. So it's kind of a toss-up which one I'm going to choose. I think with this one though, it's a pretty good sized stone. So I can flare them outwards and I think it'll look nice. So I'll probably go with this one this time. The last thing I'm going to do before and I'm going to mount all 3 of these at the same time towards the end of the video, I think. We're going to be mounting it like that, but in order to get it to mount nicely, I want to file the tops of these so they're flat. So it looks like the wires just kind of like merge right with the back. They're going to be a little flimsy when you're filing them sideways like this, so they may get out of position. You'll have to reposition them again. If you go this way, one side will chatter and the other side will go. So I suppose you could go diagonally. Either way, we'll get these flattish anyway. I guess you could put them on the mandrel. Cut that part out, Chad. So I'm going to say this while I'm thinking of it, even though I'm not going to solder this on quite yet. Inevitably, no matter how careful you are, there's going to be at least one of these, since we've got 6, and we're trying to get them all to touch the back of that bezel at the same time. And if one of them is slightly away from it, then when we go to solder these, that one may not solder. So after we solder them, we'll always want to check to make sure all 6 of them have actually soldered to the back, because nothing more embarrassing than having one of your wires not attached when you're making this sort of a band. So, so we'll set that to the side and work on the second band now. And the second band is going to be for this one. We're going to actually take a piece of I think we're going to use 6 gauge half round and cut the ends so that it can be split open like that. This stuff is relatively hard to bend for some people by hand, so if you need to, use whatever tools you need in order to bend it the way you need to bend it. Even though I'm losing some strength in my hands, I still have pretty strong hands. So I'm gonna file these flat. This is the fun part because we get to see if Chad is having a good sawing day or not. I sometimes have better sawing days than others. So I'm going to flatten this out a little more. So I know it's 4 millimeters and some change, so I'm going to do about 2 millimeters in the middle here. I went about 11 millimeters down on those. I'll let that dry for a minute. Then we'll go over and see if we can saw down that middle. I find if I get it started using a slot that I've previously cut in my little bench pin here, that helps me to get it going in the right direction. I think this is a number 1 blade. I did okay. Not great, but okay. That one I did less good than the first one, I think. Either way, I think it's probably good enough, so let's head back. So to get these kind of spread open, sometimes I use a knife blade to just kind of gently pry them open. As always, if you're using sharp things, be careful. If you need to, clean up your terrible saw job like I did. Hopefully your saw job will be better than my saw job. But for a long time, I just didn't saw things because I wasn't very good at it. But one of the things I found was when I got a decent saw, it really helped a lot. So buy yourself a nice saw. Okay, and this is just like any other kind of shank for a ring. We can do it around the ring mantle. Just trying to make them a little more symmetrical. And we'll see where we're at size-wise. I think I need to cut these slightly shorter. I was shooting for what, 8.5, I think, about. And then I think what I'm going to do is the same thing I did on this previous one, where I'm going to file it so it just kind of flows right in there. So I'll be right back. This one should be a little bit easier to file like this because it's not as flimsy as the other one. Just want to see how flat that's sitting. That's pretty good. So we'll set that one to the side, and then we'll do the final one. This one's going to be a piece of 8 gauge half round and 2 pieces of 14 gauge round soldered together. Look at that, kind of make sure that's pretty straight. If there's a tiny bit of variation, it'll draw it together when the solder starts wicking down the seam. I used to worry about doing this on the back side because of solder being messy, but it's nothing. A little bit of a knife edge abrasive silicone wheel will just take care of any excess there, and usually if you don't overdo it, it'll just wick right along there and have a pretty neat solder seam anyway. So let's let me make sure I have some solder incidentally. So you could just lay some pieces on here. I'm probably going to pick solder it. If you've never seen pick soldering, I'll put a video up there for you. It's one of those skills that I think is worthwhile to learn. It makes it so much easier to position solder in different places. So once you learn how to do that, suddenly things become a lot easier. It felt like to me anyway, when I figured out how to do that years ago. So let's get this whole thing nice and hot. If you watch, when that reaches the right temperature, that'll just all of a sudden melt and start wicking down that seam. Might as well put one on this one too, over here. We'll just add a little bit more. So far it's about halfway. Over here. We have a nice solder seam all the way down now. I'm just going to cut these off pretty close to the same length. I suppose I should inspect my seams. That's always a good idea. Looks pretty good to me. Don't see any gaps or anything. Alright, so let's just file these ends flat. Okay, got those flat, so let's bend this one around the ring there. I want to get right to an 8. I want it to drop right to the right spot. That's pretty close. So just like on the other ones, I'm going to file the top flat so I can just have it kind of merge right into the back of this. So let's do that. I think that's pretty close. We'll give it a try. I have some solder here, so I'll just flux it and then we'll put a couple of pieces there. So again, with these things, you got to consider where most of the mass is. It's quite a bit in the band on this one, but it is also above the other piece, so it's going to be a little bit more exposed to the flame. I want to make sure to adequately heat that bottom piece. And it looks like I did a pretty good job because it flowed and stuck to both at about the same moment. So Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. And that actually looks reasonably straight. So I'm going to go ahead and pickle that one. And let's do this one. One here. Oopsie. Back here. Again, just heating the lower part as well as the upper part. That looks like it's pretty centered. I think I did alright on that one. So let's throw that one in the pickle. Let's see if we can do this one. Most common mess up when I'm doing these is I bump them with a torch and knock them out of position. Let's see if I can put a little bit more on this middle one here. That looks okay. Let's make sure we got good connections down here. It would come loose after you set your stone, and then you have to pull your stone out again. And that kind of stuff is less than great to have that. Alright, so I'm going to let that pickle with the other ones, and then when you see me next, I'll have some finished pieces. So, like I said, the focus here was on making these shanks. If you're interested in learning how to bezel set a stone, I'll put a link to a video up there. But either way, I'll see you in a few with some finished pieces. Okay, I have my finished rings here. You can see the way this one looks. It's got kind of a nice rope down the middle, some borderline kind of ones. So I think that turned out pretty. This one, let's see from the top how that split looks. I really like that. This particular design looks pretty good with this band, I think. So, but yeah, that's what it looks like from the side. And then finally we have this one here, which I still don't remember what this stone is called. But yeah, looks nice, a little more contemporary, sleek. So again, as always, there's tons of variations you could do. I'll take some better pictures of these, and I will put them at the end of the video. Alright, well that was 3 simple ring shanks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And like I said earlier, I'd love it if you left a comment. But before you go, also go to my main YouTube channel page and check out all of the different videos that I have. There's a playlist page if you want to see a more organized version, but there's over 360 videos there, so I think there's almost certainly something else you'll find interesting if you enjoyed this one. So check those out. I'd love it if you subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the video description down below as well, because there's some important links there, including the link to my ebook. If you want to get one of those design idea books, those are available on my merch stores, and there's a link there. A link to my Patreon if you want to find out about that. And since I'm now an affiliate of Pepe Tools, there's even a link to that if you want to click on that and buy yourself a nice rolling mill or something. So, all right, well, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it. Take care. Happy silversmithing.